نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. Brothers and sisters, inshallah, we're just going to carry on with the program now. If you'd like to all gather around, inshallah, Aziz. Unless you have an excuse to get back on the sides, inshallah, Aziz. Inshallah, for our next speaker, I'd like to call Dr. Ghazali, Shaykh from Birmingham. He studies in Glasgow University, mashallah, so he's from Birmingham, he studies in Glasgow, and mashallah, he's very, has a lot of intelligence, very soulful person, mashallah, and he's also a student of dentistry at Glasgow University, and his topic today is about celebrity cultures, who's my role model. So inshallah, Aziz, I'd like to invite him to say a few words, inshallah, Aziz. Nare Takbir! Allahu Akbar! Nare Takbir! Allahu Akbar! Nare Risalat! Ya Rasulullah! Nahmaduhu wa nusalli wa nusallimu ala rasulihil kareem. Amma ba'd, a'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna 'alan nabi. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu 'alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina wa maulana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim alayhi. My respected guests, Shaykh, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. When we look at our communities, we see people engaged in adultery, drugs, violence, and all sorts of crime. We only need to take a trip down to Winslow Road in order to see this occurring. Known drug dealers driving fast cars, blasting out unsavory music from Tupac Shakur to RDB, with small children looking up to them in awe and speaking amongst themselves that they know so-and-so, that they want to become like them, if not bigger and better. We find sisters meeting up in underground shisha cafes, dressed to impress, to late hours, in an environment that in reality is not that different to nightclubs and bars. To the extent that even some of these places have now started to sell non-alcoholic beer. And we find various brands like Cobra and Holston, who also happen to produce alcohol. What drives people to buy it? Do they actually like it? Or is it the image? If so, then what makes them so loyal to certain brands over others? Is it a decision that they make on the spot? Or is it developed? Now, I'm not here today to speak on what is permissible and what is not, but rather I want to highlight some of the problems within our communities that have caused the vast majority to implement the so-called high life within our conduct, and to engage in a discussion with you about our role models in society and the images we implement and the brands we are loyal to. Let me begin by asking, how many people in the audience feel as though they are individuals? To what extent are you all individuals? Does your genotype totally control your individuality? Or does your environment play an important role in who you are? How many of the experiences have you had, be it direct or indirect, influence you in the way you compose yourself, both internally and externally? If I was to lock you away in a cave with sufficient food and water from the world, would you still be the same person you are today? Of course not. So what extent are you in control of who you are? Who are the individuals or what groups of people have an influence around you? A few months ago, an article in the Telegraph reported that Professor Richard Wiseman of the University of Hertfordshire asked almost 2,500 people to complete online questionnaires about their characters and those of their pets. He found that many dog lovers, cat owners, and even reptile keepers said they shared many of the same traits, such as happiness, intelligence, independence, and a sense of humor as their pets. But he also discovered that the longer an animal had been with their owner, the more likely they were to have picked up the characteristics. I guess now when you hear the saying, a dog is a man's best friend, it'll have other connotations. This article, plus many other scientific investigations, have repeatedly proven that animals have an impact on us. So what I'm trying to say is that if animals have such an impact on us, then what impact will those individuals we surround ourselves with have on ourselves as individuals? There is a hadith, in more words or less, that the Prophet ﷺ used to remind the believers to associate always with the righteous people and make good friends. The example of a good friend and a bad friend is like a perfume dealer and a blacksmith. From the perfume dealer, either you will buy good perfume or you will get a good smell as you leave. But from the blacksmith, you will get burns on your body, your clothes, or at the very least, you will get a bad smell. This hadith can be found in Al-Bukhari. So clearly the environment we surround ourselves in is very important. So let us now examine how many of us establish friends. Many a time I'm sure you have heard people say, again and again, that the best friends you make are at university, or the friends for life are the ones you grew up with, or have lived with. And I'm sure you may think of many more. But what is the drive to create such friendships? Is it an act of selfishness, that I am able to gain something from them? Or is it more towards a side of selflessness, that I am able to help them? What drives them to be my friend? Are they truly my friends? What defines a true friend? Do we ever question consciously the reason or the purpose of our friendships? In a hadith narrated by Abu Hurairah, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, a man follows the religion of his friends, so each one should consider whom he makes his friend. You know, when I was in school, the kid with the best toys was always looked up in awe. Irrespective of his other attributes, the mere fact that he had the latest toys meant that everyone wanted to be his friend and was perceived to be cool. Later, I went on to secondary school and college. The term cool then divided into many parts. It started in my first years with people who were good at sports, wore designer labels, and dressed the best. Later changed as rap, rock and roll culture developed, with listening to a lot of music and taking drugs. I slowly saw my friends being forced, whether consciously or subconsciously, to materialize their identity and adopt an image so they may belong to a group. Within each group, you can see similar traits, such as the type of jokes they had to the way they dressed. This slowly grew to the extent that the vast majority of them only associate themselves with another group out of necessity. Until I was immersed in an environment, disunited amongst groups that thought they were more superior to one another. And it is still evident in my university life as a student, only with more people and more groups. Human dispositions act like a thief. The company affects in reforming or corrupting the condition of a person. Imam Ghazali said, association and companionship of a greedy person incites greed. The companionship and association of a contented person increases contentment and less desire for the worldly things, because human nature is made to follow and imitate. Sometimes the nature, without knowing, steals habits of others. And this can be found in Al-Tirmidhi. So let us now look at these groups more closely. Each group can set to have its own characteristics or its traits, and individuals may be forced to adopt and implement some of these traits so they can be identified within a certain category in society. But where do these groups as a whole get their image from? Who do these groups look up to for the inspiration to materialize this image? Who are the role models for these groups that on their own act as role models for those who wish to enter them? One avenue for explanation is celebrity culture. Many of the conceptions we have about what is cool and what isn't can be related to an aesthetic or tangible asset. For example, certain clothes people wear, the certain lifestyles people live. The way celebrities play an important role is that an artificial importance has been created in order to promote a product or a service, rather than to record a purely biographical event. As more new products are launched in the world market that is constantly expanding, the need for celebrities has become an industry itself. Do we ever question, though, that if another celebrity was to promote a certain product or service, would we still be interested in it? Say, for example, a known homosexual was to grab, would he still be as popular? Would people still listen to his music and choose to dress like him? Or would his homosexuality hinder his portrayal of a gangster image that we find in a lot of rap? So is it fair to say the image, product, or service provided by the celebrity is held in greater importance than the quality of the product itself? We live in a time where materialism is a growing problem within our communities. People are going well out their way in pursuit of these material things that one could arguably say it is almost like worship. Rather than working to live, we are living to work so that we may pursue such material assets. We find people saving large sums of money to spend on buying great things like a mansion or a sports car, to smaller objects such as designer clothes and jewellery. But do we ever consciously question where this feeling of need for these objects arises from? Or do we automatically assume that it is important as the air that we breathe and the food that we eat? A research was taken by psychologists in the USA and UK observed the behavioural patterns of individuals in relation to celebrities. After collating the results of those being investigated, they announced this crisis is called, believe it or not, celebrity worship syndrome. They define it as an obsessive addictive disorder in which a person becomes overtly involved with the details of a celebrity's personal life. The researchers created a celebrity worship scale to rate the problems and suggested that celebrity worship comprised one dimension in which lowest scores on the scale involved individualistic behavior such as watching, listening to, reading and learning about celebrities, while the higher levels of worship are characterized by empathy, over-identification and obsession with the celebrity. However, later research among the UK samples have suggested there are three aspects to celebrity worship. The first one, named entertainment social. This dimension comprises attitudes that fans are attracted to a favourite celebrity because of their perceived ability to entertain and become a social focus, such as, I love to talk with others who admire my favourite celebrity, and I like watching and hearing about my favourite celebrity when I'm with a large group of people. How many of you find yourselves engaging in discussions about certain programs on TV? Programs such as Strictly Come Dancing and Pop Idol. Have you ever looked closely at the names given to such programs? The name Strictly Come Dancing could potentially provide you with a subconscious order to come and dance. Now, how many of the sisters wanted to, or know of somebody who wanted to take up dancing after watching the program? Not convincing enough? Well, look at the name pop idol. Where does the term idol come from? If we search through history books, repeated examples are given of idol worship. Why have they used the name pop idol? Could this also be written as pop worship? What was wrong in calling it pop star, or become a pop star? What message is being put forth? The second aspect of celebrity worship is intense personal. The intense personal aspect of celebrity worship reflects intensive and compulsive feelings about the celebrity, akin to the obsessional tendencies of fans often referred to in literature. For example, I share with my favourite celebrity a special bond that cannot be described in words. And when something bad happens to my favourite celebrity, I feel like it happened to me. How many people have watched Big Brother? In one of the recent Big Brothers, a well-known Indian actress called Shilpa Shetty won it. Across the tabloids, we would find statements like, "We love you, Shilpa Shetty," as she came out of the Big Brother household, when she was abused by a fellow member of the household called Jade Goody, with certain racist remarks. Many people felt as though it happened to them and took it very personally. Jade Goody was arguably pressurized into giving a public apology for her actions. Yet today, we find many racist remarks by the BNP, yet no public apology is warranted. On what basis are we able to place one individual's feelings above another? The third aspect and the final aspect of celebrity worship is borderline pathological. This dimension is typified by uncontrollable behaviors and fantasies regarding scenarios involving the celebrity, such as, I have frequent thoughts about my favorite celebrity, even when I don't want to, and my favorite celebrity would immediately come to my rescue if I needed help. The celebrity would come to their rescue. Some people actually have faith in the celebrity to help them at a time of need. Is this not worship? Who do you find yourselves looking to at a time of need? Another common complaint of modern celebrity culture is that the public, instead of seeking virtues or talents in celebrities, seek those who are the most willing to break ethical boundaries, or those who are the most aggressive in self-promotion. In other words, infamy has replaced fame. The social wall of the town drunk, the court jester, or the sexually indecent are not new, but arguably the glorification of these individuals is. Individuals like Paris Hilton and 50 Cent receive large amounts of attention in social dialogue and the media. Another explanation is that this exaggeration of modern celebrity culture is created out of a need for drama and spectacle. A need for drama and spectacle. Creating a celebrity as a godlike figure, and once this image is created, the desire to destroy it and shame the individual in the most extreme ways possible. Paparazzi culture and tabloid magazines are the prototype example of this theory. Unfortunately, as a consequence, our society is filled with mixed messages. On one hand, you might see a commercial encouraging you to keep away from drugs and abuse. The next minute, you might be watching a movie where the character thinks drugs are cool. So who do we find ourselves following? Who is our role model? A survey was taken in the Western world amongst the youth as to who their role model was. And the results of the survey showed that the youth of today wanted to become like David Beckham. Such is his position amongst the youth, that if you were to go to a local barbers a year ago and you asked for a mohawk, they would give you a mohawk, to the extent of even copying the specific brands he was wearing in public appearances. The reason they found behind this was that he is a celebrity. He symbolizes success. He's married to a successful pop star, and he earns a lot of money and wears nice clothes. If we search for role models in Google, we will come across a website called rolemodels.net. Within the website, you'll find a general consensus of what characteristics the general public expect in a role model. Now, before I read from this list, I want you all to think of somebody who would best fit the role model in each particular characteristic within. It starts with, the person is successful in his or her career. Think of someone. Is famous. Who comes to your mind? Is athletic. Gets a lot of respect. Is well educated. Is polite. Is honest. Is peaceful. Is wise. Is artistic. Who keeps coming into your head? Stirs up important human rights issues. Wants to right wrongs. Speaks up about beliefs. Helps other people. Works hard. Works smart. The list continues. Gives money to charity. Is religious. Is spiritual. Has a sense of humor. And we have more, like help others learn. Is self-sacrifice. Takes part in the community. Who comes in your mind with each one of these? Now, no doubt Allah has blessed us with certain gifts and abilities. This is most notably seen within our society, amongst our celebrities. It is up to them to use it or abuse it. Take, for example, the praise of Britney Spears. She has been blessed with a beautiful voice, but has she used it or abused it? If you had a 7-year-old girl, would you want her to be like Britney Spears? Of course not. Yet you find across the world small girls wanting to be like her. What is it about her that makes her not a good role model to have? Well, the fundamental issue here is that though she has been blessed with certain abilities, it is not consistent throughout her. And everyone would have to admit that she is not a perfect role model in all aspects of life. This is even more evident with her recent depression antics, coming out of rehab, and the list goes on. This is common in the vast majority of celebrities. Though the media portrays them to be successful to the extent of worshipping them, they are unhappy. But have we ever wondered as to why they are unhappy? What is missing in their lives? Why is it that there are inconsistencies within their conduct? Would it not be better to have a role model who is complete? Someone who is consistent. Someone who has been blessed by Allah in all aspects of life. So the question now arises, which person, past and present, had been blessed by Allah in all aspects of life? Who was complete and consistent with everything that they did? Earlier on, I asked you all to think of a person with every characteristic I read out from the list. How many of you thought of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam as someone who best fit that characteristic and could be defined as the best role model? I can see some people in the crowd are not convinced. We'll take one of the examples I gave, such as an individual who is good at sport. An individual who is good at sport. How many of you would have said the Prophet ﷺ as the first person to come into your mind? The Prophet ﷺ was into archery, camel, and horse riding, to the extent that he was undefeated in wrestling, and the list goes on. So why can we not have the Prophet ﷺ as our role model? Another one, they are trustworthy. When the Prophet ﷺ was young, he was notoriously known as the truthful and the trustworthy. People from the town would leave their money and belongings with him to keep safe because of this. Okay, one more. They are very forgiving. An example of this forgiveness and reflection was when he had visited the city of Fire. And we all know the story of they beat him with stones and he was bleeding so much that his sandals were clogged in blood. And then when the angel Jibril came to him and told him that he has angels that could crush the people with mountains on either side of them, he told him not to. He told him that it was a mistake on his fault, that they didn't accept him, and that maybe one day their offspring will become Muslims. And today, subhanAllah, I believe there reside a large amount of Muslims in that city. So my dear brothers and sisters, I encourage you all to read about him. Learn about the ways he lived his life, the way he interacted with others. Whether you are Muslim or non-Muslim, you'll appreciate the excellence of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. A common problem in our society especially amongst many Muslims today, is that we seem to have a superficial idea of who the Prophet ﷺ was. Almost as though he was a fictitious character or a myth. We fail to realize that he is the best example to learn about when attempting to be good Muslims. He was married, he had a job, he had children, and he saw his friends. So why do we find that we use these excuses, plus many more, for our actions, or should I say lack of? Many of us feel that people don't understand, and the situation is different now. But how is it any different to the time of the Prophet ﷺ? Was he not alone? Was he not a stranger when he came and blessed us with his light? Yet he remained steadfast and was a role model for all of us. We as Muslims are continually being apologetic for our actions, to the extent that some of us are losing our identity. If a brother grows a beard or a sister wears a hijab, they are called extremists. This so-called word extremism does not exist in Islam. It is the perfect balance. Islam is a way of life, not a type of practice that we use when we want to gain something from another. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He has perfected this religion for us. Within Islam you will only find the truth and the best form of practice, from human rights, animal rights, to the rights of jinns and angels. Yes, even rights for angels. It is disliked as it goes. You do not go to the mosque and eat raw onions, as it is disliked for the angels. So rather than being on the back foot and trying to hide our identity within the community, we should look up to the Prophet ﷺ and try our best to implement his ways, because no doubt the way he lived was the best of ways, and universal to the extent that it can be applied in our time today. We should not be afraid of who we are, because Islam is beautiful, my dear brothers and sisters. Islam is beautiful, and so we should not be ashamed of implementing its practices. A non-Muslim author called Michael Hart wrote a book on the 100 most influential persons in history, and after an intensive period of study, he chose the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to be the #1 most influential person in history. Why did he choose the Prophet ﷺ? He states that he was the only man in history to be extremely successful in both religious and secular aspects of life. Now, secular is used to describe something against religion, so the term that should be used is temporal, as the Prophet ﷺ lived and breathed Islam. So if a non-Muslim, after researching far and wide, established that the Prophet ﷺ was the most influential person in history, with his success coming from Allah, enabling him to be the best role model in society, why is it that as Muslims we find it so hard to implement his ways, despite knowing that he is the best role model for us? If you take the earlier example of David Beckham, it has recently been announced that he has dropped out, or he has been dropped from the England squad. How long do you think it will be before another player rises up in the England squad, and in essence, steals his fame? Previously, we saw players such as David Seaman, Tony Adams, Alan Shearer, always appear in the media, yet now they are hardly noticed. If you were in a race, how many of you would want to come first? Naturally, all of you. So in this race we call life, why would you want to adopt anyone who is not consistent and complete? Why would you want to implement anything but the best? From the Prophet ﷺ's character, his mood, his temperament, the form he was created, his behavior, his social conduct, he was the best combination of body and spirit. This is why we have to follow him and walk in his footsteps, as we don't have any other perfect example after him. So finally, I conclude, and I ask you all, the question now arises as to how do we become like our role model? Well, all we need to do, my dear brothers and sisters, is look in the Quran. In the verse that we read, each time we pray, Surah Fatiha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. Guide us onto the straight path. The path of those you have never on. And then in another part of the Quran, Allah says who He has blessed. أنعم الله من النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed the Nabis, the truthful ones, the martyrs, and the pious. So how do you recognize the pious? How do you recognize the friends of Allah? In the Quran it says, the friends of Allah have no fear, nor do they grieve. What does this mean? It means that they do not fear the loss of godly things, material things, these clothes, these objects of desire we see ourselves chasing. They do not fear them. Their only purpose in life is to gain the pleasure of Allah. Now think to yourself, is that what you're going for? The other day I was in my room. This is quite a personal story, but I'm happy to share it with you. I woke up and I realized that one day I'm going to die. We all live like we're going to live forever. But how many of us can actually realize what it means to die? Are we prepared? So my dear brothers and sisters, and my respected friends, if you have not taken anything from my speech, then I leave you with these 5 questions to facilitate yourself in seeking the truth. 1. Who is your role model? 2. Who should be your role model? 3. How much of your life mirrors theirs? 4. What is stopping you in becoming like your role model? 5. How can you become like your role model? I pray that Allah forgives me for any mistakes that I have made during this speech, and I pray that He continues to guide us into the straight path. Slowly.